Well, it's another exciting day in the structural frame, and what we're going to be doing today is looking at some mechanisms for doing coordination. So we're going to talk a little bit about some vertical coordination, and we're going to talk about some lateral coordination, and we'll finish up by looking at 4 different companies and how they are either vertically or horizontally coordinate. We'll also look at, towards the end, structural imperatives associated with structural frame. So, going to be a great lesson. Let's start off by looking at vertical coordination. So, authority, where you've got a chain of command, is a great example of vertical coordination. And you can have varying degrees of authority. You know, during the time that I was in Iraq, there was the Iraqi generals, a couple of 3 and 4 stars, asked, why do the Americans always beat us? And the answer was how authority was handled in the 2 different armies. In the American Army, authority and control is decentralized. Everyone has a common commander's intent, a common understanding of what's to be accomplished. But there's the agility for a sergeant or for a second lieutenant to make decisions as long as it's congruent with that intent. In the Iraqi Army, all of those types of decisions have to go all the way back up to a general officer and then flow all the way back down. And the problem with that is, while all that is going on, while they're trying to reach a decision, the Americans are attacking, adapting, attacking, adapting, and that agility, based on how vertical coordination is done within the organization, has led to a great deal of victory for the American Army over an extended period of time. All right, so other mechanisms of doing authority include rules and policies, and so the ability to kind of capture best practices, write them down, then get everybody on board that, you know, this is how we're going to do something, this is how we're going to, you know, solve this particular issue or problem across the entire company. There can be some challenges. You can create so many rules and policies that it has an effect on both risk and innovation. So you start becoming very risk averse, and innovation does not occur because you've got so many policies and paperwork in place to address a particular issue. And then the second thing where rules and policies or SOPs don't work is when a black swan event occurs. And there'll be a movie on the website talking about black swan events. Very important, I think, that you review that and understand black swan events as you go along. The other component on policies is, when you look at policies, policies are generally overarching documents that are approved by a board of trustees or an advisory board. Below policies are things called standards, and standards actually are an implementation of those policies, and tend to change a little bit more frequently than the policies themselves. And then finally, underneath that, you'll have guidelines. So there is actually a hierarchy in building policy, and it's important to follow that as you're looking at an organization. All right, next we move to planning and control systems, and there are 2 that are covered in the book: performance control and action planning. Performance control is a system where you're imposing concrete outcome objectives. So you know, an example would be increase sales by 10% this year. So you're telling them what to do, but you're not telling them how the results are to be achieved. The other side of that, and looking at action planning is where you're specifying both the method and the time frame for decisions and actions. So something like increase this month's sales by using a company-wide sales pitch. So you're telling them not only what to do, but how to do it. All right, well, we've covered 3 different mechanisms for vertical coordination. Lots of people like to use this: authority, rules and policies, and then planning and control systems. Now we're going to move on and look at some lateral coordination and how those things take place. And as you look to the bullet list on the left, you can see a number of very familiar lateral coordination mechanisms. Meetings where you bring people together, forming a task force, building coordinating roles or matrix structures or networks within the organization. And this allows that kind of horizontal coordination where folks can get together, talk about what's going on, come up with possible solutions, and move forward. And you'll see later on the ability to convene, to form the agenda within the political frame is actually very powerful. So these lateral means of communications can be extremely powerful within an organization and should not be taken lightly. They create opportunities to advance your position or your agenda. The same is true within the symbolic frame. Again, these forms of lateral coordination are very important, and it's not just another meeting. Just keep that in mind, that these are important. All right, let's look at now 4 companies, if you will, and think for a minute about, well, what, are they using vertical coordination? Are they using horizontal? And the answer is all of these are using a combination thereof. But when you kind of look at their underlying culture of how things get done within each of these companies, there are actually some stark differences. So you look at McDonald's, it's really a culture of top-down authority. You've got a small group in Chicago or outside of Chicago that are providing lots and lots of guidance to all of the McDonald's franchises. And so a culture of top-down authority. If you go over and look at Harvard, it's much more of a culture of bottom-up authority, okay? Much more of a culture of shared governance and with a great deal of power down at the individual professor and department level. Let's look at the other two. If you look at Amazon, it's a culture of metrics with customer satisfaction at the absolute center. They're trying to do everything they possibly can to optimize the customer experience. And so lots and lots of metrics and data is collected, and all of that data is harvested and used to drive customer experience. And then if you look at Zappos, it's a culture of happiness. Metrics don't come into play as much. And the interesting part is Amazon bought Zappos, realized the differences in culture, and allowed Zappos to continue to operate separately to maintain that culture because it was key to their success. All right, let's finish up by looking at some of the structural imperatives, and these are some of the kind of dimensions that you need to look at when you're starting to think about a company, starting to think about how you're going to do vertical and lateral coordination and how effective those are going to be. All right, so the size and the age of a particular organization. You're going to see more complexity and more formality as the size and age increase. The smaller the company, less formal, less complex. Everybody's in jeans and t-shirts and so on and so forth. If you look at core processes or technology needs, they have to align with whatever structure you're trying to put into place. So again, going back to if you've got a culture of metrics, that's going to drive different processes. If you've got a culture of top-down authority or bottom-up authority or happiness, those core processes are very, very different. Environment is another indicator or dimension that you're going to have to consider. And again, you can see the text here. Stable environments, you've got a simpler structure. The turbulent, unclear, more complex, and more flexibility. Going back, if you will, to that example between the Iraqi and American armies. Strategy and goals Again, the degree to which the company actually articulates those is going to require different cultural adaptations. If you look at the company I work at, we tend to reorganize based on what those strategic goals are going to be for the company, so that we've got alignment behind each of those strategic goals. Information technology is having a transformational effect on most organizations, and it does tend to permit flatter, more flexible, and decentralized organizations. You can have workers working from home all over the place, but you've got to then pull them back together. And again, you may have structural mechanisms for doing that, so that everybody is aligned on the particular work effort. And then finally, the nature of the workforce that you're dealing with is going to have an impact on how you structure the company. Again, the nature of the workforce at McDonald's and Harvard are actually pretty different. And so it's not a big surprise that you're going to have a different structure there. All right, well, that brings us to the end of this video. We've, during this video, kind of looked at lateral and vertical coordination. We've talked about different mechanisms for doing each. We've looked at 4 case studies, if you will, or 4 companies, and the degree to which they're using vertical or horizontal coordination. And then we've looked at the structural imperatives. Next lesson, we're going to take a little bit of an interlude and do a little bit more comparison between these two, and then we're going to start moving into Mintzberg's models and starting to look at structural configurations.